Welcome to the Into the Wilderness podcast. It has been a pretty crazy 2 weeks for us since we put up the Donnie Vincent show.
Yeah, I think there's probably quite a lot of new listeners. So welcome to everybody who's new, and thank you to everyone who has always listened.
Yeah, welcome. I think we have now got a huge amount of American listeners.
Yeah, which is great.
Well, we did have some before. Colin, you'll always be the first, so don't worry.
Yes. Now, we are not going to delay in getting to the first item because here in the UK, and particularly in Scotland, we will be introducing some new airgun licensing laws imminently. And it is very important for everybody concerned, if you own an air gun of any description, that you are aware of these. So we're going to cut straight to Alex, who is the director of SACS, who, of course, are the sponsor of this podcast, the Scottish Association for Country Sports, and we're going to hear what he has to say about the airgun licensing and everything that you need to know. So listen up.
It's a really concise way to learn what you need to know, so listen up.
And then we've got more stuff for you after this.
We're at the Northern Shooting Show.
Yeah. So listen up for now, and then you'll hear from us again just shortly. Morning, Alex. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've had a lot of requests talking about air guns and people not very sure what's happening in Scotland, what they need to do. You're going to provide us with a summary of what everyone needs to know, because I know you've been working on this a huge amount over the last few months, and particularly in the last couple of weeks. If we just start off with, I'm an air gun owner, I've got air guns in my house, I'm a law-abiding citizen, what do I need to do? What do I need to do next?
Okay, first of all, there's the current surrender scheme in place, and we're hopeful that most people wouldn't use that and actually apply for an air weapon certificate, as they call it, regardless. Basically, airgun owners who do not intend to surrender their air guns and do not hold a firearm or shotgun certificate will be required by law to apply for an airgun certificate prior to the 31st of December 2016. However, in reality, you'll need to apply before the 1st of November this year, and I'll explain why as a wee quirk in the legislation that we've spotted. Basically, if by the 1st of January 2017 a decision to grant you an airgun certificate has not been determined and you submitted your application before the 1st of November, you're still permitted to possess your airguns until the final decision. You're not allowed to use them or to buy more, but you're allowed to possess. If you submitted after the 1st of November, you might be asked to store them off-site with a friend or an RFD, so that would be more hassle. From the 1st of January 2017, most airgunners will now have to have an airgun certificate to possess, use, purchase or acquire an airgun in Scotland. They call it an air weapon certificate in legislation, but we all know that airguns aren't weapons. For over 18s, an airgun certificate will cost £72. Having a firearm or shotgun certificate in Scotland or elsewhere in GB will allow you to possess and use airguns in Scotland until your next renewal. At that point, you'll then have to apply for an air weapon certificate, or an airgun certificate as we call it, at a much reduced fee of just £5 as opposed to normal £72. And also for simplicity, your certificate, if it's coming in line with your FEC and or SGC, will be given the same renewal date to make it tri-terminus or co-terminus, whichever is relevant.
Okay.
Now, this is important. Though an FEC or SGC will cover you in the short term to possess and use airguns until your next renewal, it doesn't cover you to buy or acquire another airgun, in which case you will then need to apply for an airgun certificate anyway. There are a few exemptions to airgun licensing where you won't need a certificate, for example, borrowing under supervision or borrowing airguns as an approved club. But most people from the 31st of December will need to have an airgun certificate.
Okay. No, I think that if anybody didn't quite catch that, they can rewind and listen to exactly what you said again.
That's the beauty of it.
I believe that you're going to provide a question and answer document available on SACS Facebook, and we'll work out a way to let people download that as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically a distillation of the various bits of information we've been putting out through Scottish Government, the police, ourselves, bring it all together into one fairly easily readable document that informs people as best we can in terms of what's happening and when it's happening.
That's perfect.
There's quite a lot of confusion out there, and it's important that we get the information across in a really lucid, clear way.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll at the end of this, we will let everybody know exactly how they can get hold of this information.
That's great.
So on to the next thing. We are right in the middle of what they're calling the air gun amnesty right now. I know that there's a lot of guns being handed in already.
You see the pictures on Facebook already of the police stations with a huge amount of air guns handed in.
Now, I mean, what's your view on the amnesty right now? I know my brother and I have discussed it, and our personal view is that, amongst other things, it's far too short.
Yes, far too short. It's at the wrong time, and it's been done the wrong way. And we actually feel it's been done for political expedience rather than practical effect. So we don't support the current airgun amnesty, as the press are calling it. One, because it's not an amnesty. If you are lawfully in possession of an airgun right now, it can't possibly be an amnesty. So it's simply a surrender scheme. So the press has got this well wrong. It's a very short scheme, and it comes to an end on the 12th of June. So 23rd of May, until the 12th of June. The applications for air gun certificates will start from the 1st of July. So that we feel this is simply a publicity gimmick by Scottish Government. The truth is that over the next few months, airgun owners need to decide whether they want to apply for a certificate or dispose of the guns somehow. We strongly recommend that everyone who possibly can applies for an airgun certificate. However, if there's genuine need to dispose of an airgun, then you can take it to a gun shop or an airgun club rather than just hand it in to the police to be photographed for PR reasons and then cut up as scrap. Remember, there's no compensation as this is not a ban, it's licensing. So our advice is either keep it and get it licensed, certificated, or you can hand it into an airgun club or an RFD and make something out of it. From the 1st of January 2017, the airgun legislation will come into full force. After that date, any airgun owners without a certificate or permit could face a fine or imprisonment of potentially up to 2 years. It's really quite serious stuff.
Yeah, so it's very important that people do pay attention to what's going on right now. And like you said, I mean, I'd much rather people decide that they don't want to go down the route of licensing air guns that they have, and I would encourage people to do that, as indeed you have, is hand it to somebody who's going to make use of it, who is going to license it. And Airgun Club is a great place to put it if you don't want it.
I feel sorry for probably the huge amount of parents or grandparents that have air rifles maybe tucked away in their loft that they don't know about. In 2 years' time, they're digging it out and they've got an air rifle in their loft. There must be loads out there.
Well, we feel strongly that the bulk of the population hasn't got a clue, one, that air gun licensing is coming in, and secondly, what to do about it. And I know of many people that have air guns in sheds. We all know them in attics or whatever, some with the springs broken, some that have been forgotten about. But if that air gun can fire a pellet, even if the spring is broken, if it can fire a pellet and it's in working order, from the 1st of January next year, it will be an offence to possess it without an air gun certificate. The Scottish Government's current PR scheme is pretty meaningless. There's not much investment in it. There's adverts in the back of buses, adverts on the radio, and adverts in the news. But the message just isn't getting out to people. And we're getting a lot of phone calls from even shooters who are saying, we've got airgun licensing, I've been scrapped. What's this about it coming in? In the last 48 hours, we put up a big post on Facebook about the fees and other bits of information. From that post itself, we've generated over 240 specific comments and inquiries. We've been working flat out over the last 48 hours to keep people, not just SACS members, keeping people informed of what's happening and how they can make sure that they stay lawful. So that we feel that we're doing more right now than the Scottish Government. That's just not fair.
And your, I mean, it was an incredibly detailed post that you put up on social media. It's been shared far and wide by many people and many organisations, I believe. Yes,
it's been a real vote of confidence in SACS that other organisations have put their work onto their website. Yes, it's
well,
nice
we're going to do the same.
Are doing that.
We're going to steal it from you and put it on our website.
With permission.
With permission.
No, you're very welcome. It's nice to see that. We have a very strong legal firearms background at SACS, and it's something we take great pride in.
No,
So
absolutely.
if other organisations want to make use of that, then by all means, give us a shout, and we're happy for that to happen.
Yeah, all for the greater good, of course.
Yep, absolutely.
So just going on to, in terms of what is actually covered, there is maybe a little bit of a grey area between what is an air gun. So what is the qualification of an air gun or air weapon, as they're calling them, that will require you to get it licensed?
Okay, so this is the detail bit. Get your pens at the ready. The 2005 Air Gun Licensing Act, we'll call it for that in short, it covers all air guns with a muzzle energy exceeding 1 euro. That's basically about 3/4 of 1 foot-pound. It doesn't cover those currently required to be held in the firearms certificate, i.e. air pistols above 6 foot-pounds and air rifles above 12 foot-pounds muzzle energy. The new law also covers airgun component parts, things like barrels or cylinders and that kind of thing. It also covers airgun sound moderators, so they will come under this part of the actual act as well. Our view is that's daft. It's as daft as in being an FACs. I'm sure you share the same view as myself. In my view, sound moderators are less dangerous than a brick in your hand. But airsoft and low-energy plastic BB firing guns are not classified as air weapons under the new law. And also, really importantly, airgun pellets aren't subject to controls. So you can still buy them off eBay or buy them over the shop counter without a certificate. That's not a drama, and that's something that we feel is actually quite sensible.
Yeah.
One issue there that it reflects on another law that's live is the Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006, and that reflects on realistic imitation airsoft guns with a muzzle energy below 2.5 euros or 1.3 euros for fully automatic guns. Now, if you don't use airsoft guns, you don't need to worry about that or understand the figures, but if you do, the chances are that you're aware of this already. So these realistic imitation airsoft guns aren't technically air weapons, and the use is already controlled by the VCR 2006 Act. They don't come under airgun licensing. Also, crossbows and Darrell listening, spearfishing guns are not covered by the new law. So you're okay to go fishing.
You had me worried there for a second.
So we've actually had a couple of questions about that, whether crossbows were going to be brought into this, but no, thankfully they're not.
It was time to leave the country if the spear gun had to be licensed.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the other big one here is paintball guns. There's a couple of areas of difficulty here. If paintball guns are being used as an approved paintball venue or a formal paintball venue, then that's fine. If they are used for other purposes, then they may need a certificate, and that's a grey area that's yet to be finalised. We'll get more information on that, and anybody doing paintball, you probably have your own professional bodies that will represent you there anyway. But as and when we come across more information, we'll pass it on.
Okay.
One other small thing is the many people out there that collect antique air guns and don't actually fire them. If they can still fire an air pellets beyond the energy threshold, then they will require a certificate, even just for collection. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay, I was quite surprised about the possible grey area with paintball guns, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see what comes of that.
Yeah, I mean they're highly dangerous. You can walk into the post office anywhere.
Well, I
think we're getting into the realms of nonsense here. But the fact is that the government bringing this legislation forward, as flawed as we believe it is, has had to put down some thresholds of energy, etc. Mm-hmm. And we agree with the principle, but of these thresholds, you have to have that. But we do not agree with the principle of airgun licensing. The whole thing's nonsensical.
Mm. So in terms of a certificate, you now have one because you've applied. How long does it last? Is it comparable to owning a shotgun and firearms certificate, as a lot of our listeners probably do?
Okay. For applications received between the 1st of July this year and the 31st of December this year, the certificates will last between 18 and 26 months. The reason for this is because of cyclical licensing workloads. And a formula was created that allowed the police to figure out how they can bring in a large number of airgun certificate holders without adding an extra burden onto licensing resources. And we support that. It's quite a sensible measure, actually. Probably a good idea even to bring it into FAC and SGC licensing. For the shorter certificates, the fees for them will be proportionately less. And that's obviously a fair thing. Certificates issued from applications received after the 31st of December will then last for the full 5 years. And then certificates issued along with firearm certificate or shotgun certificate renewals after 31st December will be coterminous with the FEC or SGC certificates. Now, if you're aged between 14 and 18, your first air gun certificate will have a special non-buying or gifting condition. This will end when you're 18. So if you are 16 and you apply for your first air gun certificate, by the age of 18, 2 years later, that will get cancelled. You have to apply for a fresh one, which is unrestricted. The fresh one will then allow you to buy or acquire air guns that the first one didn't.
Okay.
Also, from the age of 18, you can buy airgun pellets, which you currently can't do in current law. You can be gifted them for certain exemptions purposes, but not actually buy them. So if you get an air gun certificate at 17, it will cost proportionately less than one that you get at 18, and that's a good thing. So again, that's fair. It brings people into full certification at 18 in terms of buying air guns and pellets, and we think that's a sensible thing in a rather nonsensical law overall. Mm-hmm. So there's a positive there and a rather big negative.
Okay. So if you're at that end of the age spectrum, you've got a couple of things to think about and consider, and I'm sure supportive parents will help you get through that as well. Application for a certificate. Most people know how you go about that. Giving the police a call, they'll send you the applications, or you can download them online from your local firearms department website. How do you go about it with an airgun? Is it going to be the same sort of thing?
Okay, so they actually call them air weapon certificates in the legislation, but we all know that airguns aren't weapons, but when we use the old term airgun wherever we possibly can. Police Scotland will be running airgun licensing, and applications will go live from the 1st of July this year. Certificates and permits, however, will not be valid until the 1st of January 2017. So you can apply for them from the 1st of July, download a form, fill it out as best you honestly can, send it into the police with a fee. They do the processing behind the scenes, but your eventual certificate that you receive in the post won't actually be valid until the 1st of January 2017. We don't yet know how long the actual application process will take, or how many applications they'll get. I mean, they could have 10,000 in 2 weeks, or maybe 1,000. We have no idea yet. But that's something that we'll inform members of as we become more aware of it. Police Scotland say that they'll manage with a surge in numbers. I don't know. I'm not one to judge. We'll just have to wait and see.
Okay, so yeah, you will put up the links, I'm sure, when you know where they can be downloaded, and certainly we'll do the same so that people know where they can get the applications for certificates.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Just to finish up, Alex, we've given everybody the important information that they need to know to make sure that they stay law-abiding with regard to the new legislation. But can you just summarize by telling us why this was actually brought in the first place? We're going to go on to touch on this with a couple of people in the podcast that follows, where you were in attendance with a number of people at the Northern Shooting Show. But if you could just sort of go over that right now, so people understand why on earth we're in this position that we're in right this minute.
Okay, sure. The Scottish Government brought forward air weapons and licensing to help us better protect Scottish communities and make them safer. They felt, we believe genuinely, that there was a public safety element to the public ownership and use of airguns in Scotland. Now, the statistics don't actually support that, so they keep banding around 182 airgun offences in the last 12 months, in the last statistical year. But actually, in terms of all offences in Scotland, it's a drop in the ocean. It's a tiny, tiny amount. The Scottish Government says that airgun licensing follows the principles of existing firearms licensing and allows a fit person to obtain a license to own, possess and use an airgun. Our response to that is, quite honestly, is total bollocks. Airgun licensing is disproportionate in regard to the tiny amount of airgun crime and totally unfair to the vast majority of lawful airgun owners. It's an absurd law that's highly unlikely to deter criminals. On statistics, in 2013 to 14, there were 65,661 recorded violent crimes in Scotland, but of them, just 34 were committed with an airgun. That's 0.05% or a 20th of 1%. You know, what's next? Licensing hammers and screwdrivers?
Yeah.
You know, the challenge is that the law is here, it's coming into force on the 1st of January 2017, and SACS and other organisations are doing their level best to inform members to make sure that they're aware of the new law and the penalties of not following it. Behind the scenes, we'll keep fighting the legislation, but from the 1st of January 2017, members will have to obey it.
Mm. Yeah.
Just out of interest, you might actually already have this written down, and I know that we did talk about it at the Northern Shooting Show. Is there any more information about people travelling from other parts of the UK or other parts of the world bringing an airgun into Scotland?
Yes, there is. I mean, visitors that have a valid firearm or shotgun certificate, even if that firearm or shotgun certificate's in England or Wales, they're not Northern Ireland, I'll come back to that. They're covered to possess and use airguns in Scotland up to their FAC or STC renewal.
Okay.
So say you come from Doncaster and you got a shotgun certificate that expires in 2017, but you shoot airguns in Scotland for rabbits or competitions, you would then be covered up until your STC renewal to use and possess your airguns in Scotland. However, you're not covered to buy or acquire any more in Scotland. If you wish to do so, you'd have to apply for a visitor permit. If you don't have an STC or an FAC, you'll have to apply for a visitor permit, something akin to the actual airgun certificate, which allows you to possess airguns in Scotland, and importantly also to buy them in Scotland. And it's about £20. So that is £20 to have a visitor permit. Our advice is, if you come to Scotland often, if you're crossing the border and doing air gunning bits and bobs here, then get yourself an air gun certificate as well. The air gun certificate isn't just for Scottish residents, it's also for anybody that may be affected by this legislation. So you might find it actually cheaper to get your own air gun certificate in any case.
Okay.
If you come from Northern Ireland, you won't be covered by the FAC that you have there, and you'll have to apply for a visitor permit regardless.
Okay, no, that's really important, I think. Yeah.
I think that clears things up a little bit.
Alex, just one final question from me, and I'm not sure whether this has been fleshed out yet, is going to be the requirement for security storage of air guns.
Right. Okay. There is a rather detailed document that's been around for quite a while, done by the Home Office and a number of shooting organisations, including BASC and BSSC, etc., and the NRA. It's very, very good. If you stick into Google 3 words, air weapons safety, it's the first thing that comes up.
Right.
It's a PDF leaflet with good information on current airgun laws that doesn't include the Scottish airgun laws, but especially good information on security requirements and your responsibility. In terms of, do you need a gun cabinet for airguns in Scotland from the 1st of January next year? No, you don't. A locked room or cupboard or a trigger lock or security cable would suffice in most circumstances. If you've got a gun cabinet and you've got kids in the house, then it's common sense to pop them in the cabinet or in a strong room if you possibly can. The leaflet from the Home Office actually also describes the airgun security standard for the new Scottish law, which is the one that they reflect to. And in any case, there's also an offence right now, even before the Scottish law, to allow an under 18 to be in possession of an airgun, with certain exemptions that exist. So, common sense applies. If you use your head, you'll keep your airgun certificate. And if you want to keep your airgun out of the hands of minors and people that shouldn't have them, in that case, the chances are you'll be fulfilling your security requirement anyway.
Okay, so nothing in terms of security requirements has really changed with regard to the new legislation coming in?
Hasn't really changed. It's common sense applies. If you've got minors in the house and they might have access to air guns, simply lock them away. And putting them on top of a wardrobe would not be considered, in our view, as genuinely secure. That's still relatively accessible by a minor. If you lock it in a room specifically for the purpose, or a gun cabinet, or a security cable, or a trigger lock, then that in our view would be sufficient.
Perfect. Alex, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Well, we hope you found that extraordinarily informative for the air guns, because I've actually learned something there. There is a lot to take in, so this will be on forevermore.
Yes, and all of the details, including the question and answer session that we did, along with the initial information that SACS put out, is available on their Facebook page. We've shared it on our podcast Facebook page, and we are going to actually upload PDF versions to our website and provide links to that too. So if you want to visit thepacebrothers.com,
yep, it is.
It'll be on there.
For the guys that are watching on YouTube, it will be in the link, because we know that everybody does not have Facebook, just by the large amount of people that enter our competitions through email and so on. So yes. we know there is lots of non-Facebook users out there.
So visit our website, thepacebrothers.com, and you'll find the podcast tab.
Which is new, by the way.
It is new, yeah. Or YouTube link, or go and check out our Facebook page, or indeed the SACS Facebook page. All the information will be there, and I'll let you read over it and make sure that you're going to be on the right side of the law when the legislation changes, if you live in Scotland.
Well, we're just going to talk about just a few little news items
before we get
into the Northern Shooting Show. And what should we kick off with?
Well, I think we should actually kick off with our competition winner.
Okay,
let's start with that.
Oh yeah, competition, guys. We said we were going to be doing them every show, and we have been. And thank you for a lot of you. I don't even know how many pictures that we got sent either through email or on Facebook, but we put the pictures together. We picked our top 5
we
or
sat
10.
We sat down with a bunch of our friends, like we said we would do.
With our friends, and our friends decided the top 3.
Yeah.
So the top 3, because there were so many good pictures out there, you're all going to get something. So the winner of the amazing torch
is, and I'm going to butcher your surname, so I apologize for this, but Dan McClendon. And you put up a picture of your son, Darren, which was, it was a great picture, and it's exactly what we love to support, which is young people shooting. So you are going to be the winner of the Surefire Torch.
P3X Fury.
Yeah. So congratulations. You have to contact us.
Yeah,
now.
So contact us, and then you will send us your...
But there is a caveat to this.
Yeah.
You have to give it to your son. So you're going to win it because it was a picture that you put up, but I think you have to give it to your son. So sorry about that. So Darren, make sure your dad gives you the torch that we're going to send him. Okay, so because there were so many good pictures, we're going to give the second and third something away as well. And our third... our second and third, one of the entries only came in at about 1 o'clock in the morning last night, but it was a really good picture. So, can you give me the names, please? Yes, I can. So one of them is one of our very new American listeners, Trent. Yeah, well, Trent actually, he sent it in very early on. Very, very cool picture. And that was, he had one of those teepee tents like Donnie Vincent uses, with just an amazing piece of scenery, and he took the time to email us, send us some comments, and send us the picture to enter the competition. So we really appreciate that. Trent, thank you very much for tuning in now. So you are the winner of one of the really small little knives, the Spyderco. I don't know where it's gone. I gave it to you. I've actually lost it to show you on the webcam. Hang on, I'll get another one. We'll get another one. Hang on. It's so small, I've actually lost it. Okay, so you're going to get one of these cool little knives, and it comes in a nice little box as well. So we're going to send that over to you. And who's our other winner, Byron? And our last winner is Tom Ordage, who sent in very late last night. So you just sneaked in, Tom. Yeah. So those are the 3 winners. Contact us, and we'll get them sent to you. Perfect. Now, new competition. Oh yeah, new competition. Daryl's. You haven't managed to lose this, have you? No, you got the new competition prize in your hands. It's a lot bigger. So,
Guys, the new competition is the Caldwell Emax low profile ear defenders. Now, I've been doing a little bit of reading on these ear defenders, and I wouldn't mind them myself. They are electronic ones, so you put batteries in them and they reduce the sound. Byron actually has a pair, not these exact ones, but I have used electronic ear defenders for years now, and I think they're really good just because, one, they reduce the noise, but you can also speak to people.
It means you're not shouting at everyone.
Not shouting at people. And yes, so these are exactly those, but they haven't added extra. There's a headphone jack to plug your iPod into.
That's just tremendous. I only found this out about 2 minutes ago, just when we were looking at the Caldwell electronic ear defenders. So.
They're normally quite a bit of money, these electronic ear defenders. So
yeah, and absolutely essential. You should be wearing ear defenders. Mm-hmm. Save your ears.
Yep. So to enter, listen to the end of the show, and we will tell you exactly how you enter at the very end of the show. So we keep you listening.
We will put up a picture of the Caldwell ear defenders on our podcast page, so you can have a look, and we'll also put the link up to the actual Caldwell website where you'll be able to find all the info, so you can check them out. Well, I would just enter, but you can check them out before you enter if you want as well.
Our trophy cam is on the way to.
Yes, I posted it the other day
to Peter.
Yeah.
In Wales. So
apologies for the delay, Peter. We were away.
It has been posted. Okay, now we're going to move on to some news items quickly.
Yes.
There's a few. There's one in the news.
Let's start with the gorilla.
Okay, gorilla. I've read a bit of news stuff. A lot of it's a huge amount of hype. Child falls into enclosure. I don't even know how that even happens. Gorilla gets hold of the kid, and the gorilla gets shot. I mean, that's exactly what happened. There's been a huge outcry, one, for the parents to be prosecuted, and also, people are upset that they shot the gorilla. I think there's a few things to probably take away from this. One, if they hadn't shot the gorilla, there would still be an outcry that the child might have died. So I don't think anyone could have no one could win in this situation. What do you do?
It's a hard one.
I guess the argument is, well, why didn't they dart him? But a dart's not going to work straight away.
No, it doesn't. And also, the time that you organise that, like you say, something could have happened. But I'm sure pretty much everyone will have caught that news story. But very sad for the gorilla.
It is.
Sad that we have to keep gorillas in zoos as well.
I was just a way to say that. The problem is it's it's in a zoo. I mean, it's sad that we even have to have.
I'm not a big fan of animals in zoos unless it's for making sure a species stays alive.
That, for me, that's the only reason why a zoo should really exist, is that to prolong a species
or save one.
Or save one to protect them. So I think everyone's seen that. We're going to move on. If you haven't, go and check it out. But the video's all over online. Now, next one. This one goes back a few weeks ago now, but we just haven't had a chance to talk about it.
Kind of fun. It's kind of funny, but sad at the same time.
It's also more stupidity of human beings, unfortunately, a bit like the gorilla situation, I imagine. Yellowstone Park. So for our American listeners that have joined us, you'll know it a lot better than us, and you probably saw the story a lot more than us, but some tourists decided that a bison calf was cold and dying, so they put it in the back of the car, took it to the ranger's hut, and said, we've got a lost bison here. Bear in mind that bison live in some of the most harsh conditions known to man. I mean, if you see pictures of bison, they're often, in winter, covered in snow completely. These animals have been around for an extraordinarily long length of time. They can survive in the cold. So they took it to the ranger's hut, and the consequences of that is that when the rangers took it back, it was rejected by the herd, and they had to put it down. So basically, they're directly responsible for it dying.
Don't interfere,
especially this time of year. In the UK, especially, there will be lots of babies around, and
whether that be birds or deer.
Leave them be. Unless it is lying in the middle of the road, when it's probably going to die. But leave them alone.
Let nature do its thing.
Yeah.
Now, really concerning news out of Norway is that not just now one, but the second case of chronic wasting disease has now been reported. The first case was in a reindeer, a female reindeer, and I believe the latest case has been in a moose. If you want more details on that and you're concerned about it and you want to understand more about the disease, how it's transmitted, and what our risks are and what we can do to help make sure it doesn't come to our shores, I'd visit the British Deer Society website. If you put in British Deer Society into Google, it'll come up and you'll be able to navigate through to chronic wasting disease. It is a massive issue and has been a massive issue over in America, and it's been well documented there. These are the first cases in Europe, and the potential for this to be catastrophic amongst our deer populations is really quite high. So it's something that we should definitely be aware of. Definitely educate yourself and go and read about it. And what we're going to do is in the next couple of months, we're going to try and get the right people together for a podcast.
Yeah, we'll do
so that so that people can understand it and have a listen to the experts. And it's a real concern. So let's just hope that we don't hear of another case. It was only about a month between the two cases, so we'll just have to see what happens.
Yes,
it's very easily transmitted, so go and read about it.
Okay. Now, you had some other stuff written down, Byron. Some antis in Australia.
Oh, yes, I did. I'd almost forgotten about this. Now, this is very funny. I actually shared it on my Byron Pace page maybe 2 weeks ago, and I'm just going to bring up their names. But what this was is there's obviously been a drive in Australia to stop duck hunting.
Yeah.
And so they got together a bunch of sporting celebrities. I have to admit that they're not names that I actually knew, but I guess they're probably quite well known in Australia. And they put up these billboards and posters with a duck in their hand, and that was their drive to say, no one needs to hunt ducks. And the amusing aspect of that is that the shooting community then went out and found various pictures
on their Instagram or on their Facebook pages,
all available, of them eating farmed meat. So, for example, and we'll name and shame here because it's all public domain, Aaron Phillips, who is a basketball player for Australia, and the little caption, we will put these pictures up on the podcast page. Duck shooting is not a sport, signed by Aaron Phillips. And, of course, there's a picture of her with a dead fish in her hands after enjoying a day's fishing.
Well, fishing is not a sport, Aaron.
Yes.
And
I would say hashtag hypocrite, which is what the hunting supporting hunters little pictures.
The fact that she can't distinguish between the two is quite sad.
It is quite sad. And there is quite a few of them, but I'll just give you one more. Another female, because female hunters get a really hard time, so we'll put in another female here, which is Sharni Layton. I think this could be...
It's netball.
Did you decide
volleyball?
it was netball?
I'm not sure.
And exactly the same thing. She opposes wild game meat, and yet there's a picture of her enjoying some juicy meat on a plate from a farm.
And they had another one, which I don't think Byron's got up on his page, and it was a guy, football player, and he was doing exactly the same thing, holding a duck, don't eat ducks. They're bad for you. Shooting's terrible. And then there was an Instagram picture with 2,000 likes on it of him enjoying a rack of ribs at the local shop.
Yeah, like a daddy rack of ribs.
A massive rack of ribs. So it doesn't really work, guys, if you're going out and...
If you're going to go and eat farmed meat, you cannot criticize ethically sourced wild game that's been hunted and shot.
We do say ethically, guys. We do say ethically sourced. So,
but it makes them look a bit stupid. We're going to put those pictures up for your entertainment on our Facebook page.
One more thing before we go, because Packham has to come up nearly every single time. We've asked Packham to come on. Chris Packham, we're talking about here.
Yes, we have
multiple times. Excuse me.
The offer still stands.
Offer still stands. We even had people in dialogue with him. And Chris Packham said, "Oh well, I've asked to be on shooting."
He actually said that he had requested to have articles in the Shooting Times. before, but they had been declined.
They've been declined, and that basically the shooting world didn't really want him on. And we've asked him multiple times now to come on the show, and we have sent him messages, and we've had someone that listens to our show in dialogue with him on Twitter. Anyone can go and see it, and saying, well, if you want to come on a shooting show, the UK's only hunting on-demand radio show, then come on. We want him on. We want to talk to him about eating tadpoles and stuff like that,
which was the latest thing.
And he just went dead. He's gone silent. He's obviously got more important things to do. But I mean, if anyone didn't know that Chris's latest thing is that all children should eat tadpoles because it puts you more in touch with nature. And I think that's pretty cruel, actually. I wouldn't eat a tadpole unless I needed to.
I'd take the kids hunting. I think that puts them more in touch
I think
with
that puts it more in touch. Because what does eating a tadpole teach you? It's disgusting. It's not going to taste good unless you fry it up or something.
Well, yeah, I suppose if you had to.
Actually, it does look a bit like tapioca.
It does. Well, the eggs do.
Yeah, the eggs do. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. But yeah, the invitation stays open. So maybe what we should do is, for our listeners, we should start a bit of a campaign, and you should hashtag and tag us on Twitter and various other social media with a request to Chris Packham to come on, because I mean, on a serious note, I think he is in the public domain. People do listen to him, so it would be really awesome to have a proper discussion with him where we can try and form some balanced views. We can have some people on sort of our side of the mics who are involved in the shooting world along with us, and we can actually debate things with him on a two-way basis, unlike the sort of one-way basis that we get across current media. So we're going to try and make that happen, and with your help we might just be able to do that.
Yes, we will. And yeah, if anyone has any guest suggestions whatsoever, if you want a topic discussed, get it in, guys. Email podcast@paceproductionsuk.com, and you have been. I mean, this is why we've been doing all these shows, because these are all, coming up, we have some... we got
Ivan
Carter, and if you don't know who Ivan Carter is, Google his name. He has an Outdoors Channel show that is filmed by...
Brandon
Shockey, and it's a pretty wicked show. It's called Carter's War. Just YouTube it and you'll go, wow. It's all about anti-poaching and conservation in Africa.
Yeah. I'm not sure whether he's going to be on next. I've been in dialogue with him for quite some time, but he is an incredibly busy man.
Extraordinarily busy.
And we nearly had the chance to record with him the other day. He said, I can do it tomorrow. Unfortunately, we were away, and then he had to go and save a baby rhino. So we've had to reschedule.
This is a man in the forefront of the fight in Africa. He isn't just on the ground against poaching in Africa. He is going out of his way to go through Asia and try and educate. And
that's where it is.
What more can you ask for than someone taking up their time and traveling through Asia, because that is where the main battlefront is.
Yeah,
is trying to tell people that eating your nails effectively isn't gonna save you from anything, really.
Yeah. Help you or save you.
Yeah, we're also going to do a dedicated tick podcast, which
this is going to be important.
I mean, this is a worldwide thing, not just a UK thing. Lyme disease affects people across the whole world, and it is only getting worse. The ticks this year in the UK, from what we've experienced, is absolutely horrendous. And from people that we've spoken to online, it's a pretty bad year for it.
Yeah, it just certainly seems that way. And we're going to be able to speak to some people right at the forefront of coming up with solutions to prevent you getting bitten by ticks, and also cure Lyme disease. They're working on it.
We're going to get some gear. We're going to and talk through the prevention, and we're also either going to the university and we're going to go into their labs, or we're going to get the professors on the show here.
That's going to be a really important podcast, but we are not going to talk any longer because we have a very exciting conversation with a whole bunch of people who we are just about to introduce you to at the Northern Shooting Show. We talked about everything from airgun licensing, which I think is one of the first things up, all the way through to trophy hunting and everything in between. It's you'll have to excuse the slight background rumble that's in it because we are in the middle of the show.
And if you hear what sounds like a machine gun going off, that's because there was a 2-2 firing range not too far away from us.
Yeah, and they had multiple lanes and lots of people were shooting, so you might be able to hear that slightly in the background.
But it makes you feel like you're there.
Yeah, if you didn't go, you'll get a taste of what the Northern Shooting Show was like, and it was excellent. We really enjoyed it.
We enjoyed it, and hopefully going back next year.
Yeah. Don't forget that this podcast is supported by the Scottish Association for Country Sports. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And if you want to download us and listen to us, it is on
iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, and now TuneIn Radio. So we now have the full spectrum, and we are trying to keep progressing. We had an email a few weeks ago about someone wanting it on a Windows phone, and I tried to help them the best I can. But Windows is something that we don't really know a huge amount about, and I tried to do a lot of research. But that's about 5 or 6 platforms. If you can't get it on one of those, then I apologize. We do try.
But you should be able to listen to it on SoundCloud on any
device. Well, TuneIn's on most devices, or YouTube.
Yeah, perfect. And if you want to see the full catalog easily and everything that we are up to, including, of course, our series Into the Wilderness, which we have 2 episodes out. You need to check out our YouTube channel. And if you want everything in one place, just visit all the W's at thepacebrothers.com.
And it's all there for you guys. Oh, and if anyone has Instagram...
Oh, yeah, we got a huge Instagram account. Loads of content on there.
Yeah, so check it out. If you want pictures of just like everything that we get up to. I mean, this is everything from guns we test, to kit, to where we're going at that time. Go on our Instagram account.
We're going to leave you to it. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Enjoy.
Welcome everyone to the Into the Wilderness podcast. Thanks very much for joining us at the Northern Shooting Show. We've got a couple of topics to discuss today, and also just at the end we're going to talk about this game fair, which I'm looking outside and the sun is shining. We've been rather lucky with the weather this weekend, and I think by all accounts it's been a good game fair, but we'll kind of summarise that at the end. As a starting point, we might be south of the border, but airgun licensing in Scotland is something which one of our listeners asked us to bring up.
Only last week.
Yeah, just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I think we've got some pretty good people around the table to explain exactly what's going on. There definitely is the case that people with air guns in Scotland don't actually really know what's happening. Alex, if I can start with you, and just give a brief overview of what's coming forward later this year and what people with air guns need to do.
Okay, so from the 1st of July, airgun licensing comes into effect. We don't know the cost of that yet, but we think it'll be reaching about £87 for a certificate. It'll be called an air weapon certificate, an AWC, and you have 6 months up until the 31st of December to apply for it. If you already have a firearm or shotgun certificate, you will not need an air weapon certificate until your renewal is due, at which point you will then apply for an air weapon certificate if you'd wish to have one. However, if you have a firearm or shotgun certificate and between now and your renewal you want to buy or acquire another air gun, then you'll have to apply for an air weapon certificate anyway. So your firearm or shotgun certificate will cover you for possession and use of your current air guns. But if you want to buy another air gun, you have to apply for an air weapon certificate before your renewal time. The big issue, we've all fought against the air weapon certification. It's silly. It's going to make no effect in terms of air gun crime, which is statistically very, very small indeed. But it's coming through, so we have a duty of care to our members and others to make sure that they follow the law and don't get into trouble. If anybody has any questions regards to airgun licensing, you're very welcome, whether you're a SACS member or not a SACS member, to call us, and we can send you PDFs of information or speak to us on the phone, and any queries, we're happy to help you. It's quite complex in some ways in terms of requirements for airgun clubs, etc. There's still a few things yet to be confirmed, for example, the requirements for airgun security. But as this goes forward, we'll be informing our members on Facebook and elsewhere as to any updates and information. So it's a lot yet to be confirmed. It's coming in on the 1st of July. You'll have 6 months to apply for an air weapon certificate should you wish to have one. If you don't want to have an air weapon certificate, you'll be requested to surrender your air guns to an RFD or hand them in for destruction. Any queries at all, feel free to contact SACS. I'm quite sure Basque and other organisations will say the same thing, and we'll support you wherever we possibly can.
Dave, what has been the take from your members? I imagine you've got guys in Scotland, although you're Firearms UK, but who have air rifles, and a lot of firearms owners have air rifles. What has the feedback been to you?
Well, obviously a lot of people aren't happy about it at all. Moving forward, I think a lot of people feel they're going to end up just going down to take up, maybe get their shotgun certificate or firearm certificate, rather than just maybe they'll either surrender their guns or perhaps give them to friends down south. They just need to get rid of them, unfortunately. A lot of people are very disappointed that with around 22,000 people signed a petition against it, and they've been ignored. The Scottish Government's decided to press on. They've ignored all the evidence. They didn't really carry out the process properly, and we've kind of just barged out the way while we're doing it anyway. So that's not a very good thing for us. But as Alex was saying, we just need to encourage people. Keep shooting. Just if you're going to keep your air guns, go through the proper process, and we just need to show we're going to carry on doing what we do because we enjoy it.
I mean, Fraser, do you not think it, as organisations, we should be, even if we don't agree with the licensing coming into place, as Alex said, it is coming, so we just have to deal with it. We should be encouraging members to go through and apply and not give their guns away, because if you start taking air guns or whatever other guns out of the system, then where does it end?
This is it. I mean, ultimately, as shooters, we all want to be compliant with the law, regardless of whether we necessarily agree with it or not. Ultimately, certainly for myself and a lot of the followers, we would rather be in a situation where we would go through the application process rather than seeing them being surrendered. The other thing to bear in mind about the surrendering of them as well is there's no compensation. So you could be literally handing over potentially £2,000-3,000 worth of air rifle for absolutely no comeback. So again, as I say, it's worth going through the process in that respect, just in order to obviously continue on with the sport.
I mean, Pete, I don't think you do a lot of air rifle shooting these days, being more of a big bore man. But what is your take on what's happening over the border with regard to air guns?
Well, I think air guns, they certainly were for me. It's an entry into country sports, so for many people around this table, and for the guys out there too. And this north of the border is a problem at the moment, but I guess it'll head south as well. I think there's going to be a massive cost involved that nobody's really looked at and to implement that too, and it just seems to be unnecessary licensing to me, really.
Just before I come to you, Roger, Alex, can you elaborate any more on the cost implications of this? I mean, that is, I imagine it would have been a consideration for the government for implementing it. We all know how expensive it is to implement the firearms licensing and the fees that go with that. I mean, what's your take on the extra money that's going to have to be, or resources rather, that are going to have to be put aside for airgun licensing?
Well, in terms of firearm and shotgun certification right now, there are some efficiencies coming into effect, or rather being planned. For example, the potential for e-commerce, online applications, that kind of thing, that could potentially come into effect for airgun licensing as well, which would be quite cost effective. In terms of, the police would like to minimise the actual processing of this. So the hurdle to get an air weapon certificate, I don't like the term air weapon certificate, but that's a legal term now. It should be an airgun certificate, but the hurdle to apply for and get an air weapon certificate will be something akin to the Disclosure Scotland check if you were going to work with children. So if you don't have a criminal record, if you don't have anything else in the background that would be of concern to the police, then you would theoretically get an air weapon certificate. It's going to be an expensive process. We're heading into unknown territory now. We do not know what this is going to cost. We don't know how many people are going to apply for it, and we've got no idea of how many people out there are not going to apply for it because they haven't heard about it and there's no knowledge. So this is going to bring in a whole raft of new technical criminality for our members and for members of no organisation, and we think it's entirely disproportionate to the very small amount of airgun crime which is already dealt with quite competently by existing laws.
Roger, carrying on from what Pete said about air guns being the gateway into field sports, I mean, that's sort of that's day to day what you're involved in. I know you were down at the HFT earlier on today that's running here, and the amount of young people involved in it is fantastic and great to see. So what's your take on this new restriction that's going to be in place?
Well, when we heard about it at HFT Masters, we looked at it and we were very surprised, obviously, that it's all going through. I thought it was something that was just going to go away. Obviously, it hasn't, so there you go. We have to sort of like wipe your mouth and carry on. The problem is, I mean, like for competitions, we run competitions all around England, Scotland and Wales and what have you. Suddenly we're going to Scotland, now we've had to bring that forward because obviously we can't get up there after the due date, because how many shooters are going to turn up to our competition? Because obviously if they're not certificated by then, they can't shoot, whatever, I don't know. So, it's a real pain in the neck. And lots of people, I mean, I go up to Scotland quite a bit to see like shoot competitions and what have you. And the people up there are absolutely up in arms about it. They're not happy in any way, shape or form. And, are we going to do it? Are we not? I said, well, you've got to do it. I mean, that's the law, end of. So get amongst it. And it's a shame, but one of those things.
If I could just cut in, sorry.
Touching on that, because a lot of the feedback that we've had has been very, very similar. The big concern is as well is just obviously the fact that the shooters do really feel it is disproportionate in realms of, again, the limited amount of crime that is actually in Scotland now associated with it.
Absolutely.
What I was going to talk about as well, the interesting point is in visitors. I mean, I'm not quite sure what's happening with regards to perhaps shooters up down in England and Wales.
I was just going to ask that question, actually.
And what's the process of visitors? Is it going to be along the lines you need to get a temporary permit? Of having 2 laws, it's crazy, which is again a worry that they might start to implement it down south, and that's another fight for another day. But there's so many unanswered questions. It's been a rushed process.
So I don't know if anybody at the table can answer that. Has that been discussed? People from England coming to shoot in Scotland, whether it be competitions? Do you have an answer to that, Alex?
I think you can take it right back to first principles. Was there an impact assessment on this proposed legislation in the first place? There wasn't. Was there open consultation? There wasn't. The consultation was effectively, we're going to bring in this legislation regardless, and the consultation was more about how it was going to work than whether it was a good thing in principle. So what we lack in Scotland is an effective check in the system, an upper house where any silly legislation being proposed can be effectively checked and stopped before it becomes into effect. We are victims of a government that is quite happy to take forward new legislation based on its own ideological mindset rather than proportionate lawmaking on behalf of the wider community. So we are up in arms about it, we're furious about it, but obviously we have a duty to make sure that SACS members, other members, BASC are working hard on this, Firearms UK, to make sure that all of the people that we're aware that shoot air guns do so lawfully now. But how many folks south of the border have never heard about Scottish airgun licensing, coming north to shoot rabbits on a farm and don't know anything about it?
You say that about people going up north to do that. I was talking to a friend of mine only the other day, and he was saying to me, well, he's got his uncle lives up in Scotland, and I said, well, this airgun law, you have to be careful. And he said, well, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's from Essex, I've got to be honest. But anyway, I'm not knocking the Essex, by the way. And he didn't know anything about it at all. And he reads the magazines, but obviously he didn't read the right ones. And he knew nothing about it in any way, shape or form. And I was saying, well, it's very soon, you're going to have a licence. And he said, well, how does it work? Do we get a licence, we get a permit going in? Or, do you get one at the border? What's the score?
There has been some details bandied around in relation to the potential for a visitor's permit to become a reality. I mean, really, once the licensing becomes law, there really is no other way to do it other than to actually have a visitor's permit for people who are crossing the border. The problem that exists within that, though, is there's no border checks crossing from England to Scotland.
Just for people who are only listening and don't watch this, during that conversation there for the last 5 minutes, everybody was nodding their heads in agreement to everything that was being said.
I think there could be a lesson learned from this, though, is the fact that everybody around here pretty much thought, with perhaps the exception of Alex, that this was going to go away, and
Absolutely.
there wasn't a lot of coverage of it. It was covered in Airgun Shooter magazine. It definitely.
I thought you might get that in there.
Nigel Allen did cover it, but it didn't go away, and there's a lesson there that everybody that's involved in country sports should take on board.
I mean, that's spot on. If there's the biggest threat to shooting sports, in my opinion, is apathy. People that just aren't going to get involved in protecting their rights. So now is the time to really stand up with everybody else, join an organisation, choose whichever one suits your personal priorities, get involved, call them, email them, send them letters. If they ask you to send letters to your MPs, MSPs, MEPs, do so please. Get involved. Organisations aren't there to do work for you. Organisations are there to lead the effort collectively on behalf of everybody. So please get involved. Airgun licensing is a classic example of where the shooting community has not worked effectively together. That's not to say we could have stopped this, nipped it in the bud, because the Scottish Government was going to run with this regardless. There's no check in the system. But going forward with the other threats that we face, European level, United Nations level, etc., wildlife habitat directives and all that kind of thing, working together in unity is the best way forward. We have to do this.
Well, actually, it was one of the things I wanted to bring up, and maybe if I can come to you, Dave,
Sure.
about organisations working together where there's a definite common ground, and how important that is to you, and what you see going forward being the way forward to preserve what we have as shooters.
Well, as Alex said, unity is just it's the number one issue. I mean, we all have to work together. I think in the past we've seen kind of fragmentation. Other organisations have thought, well, this hasn't anything to do with our kind of shooting, we're not going to get involved, we're not going to support each other. And I think we actually came about, I started a petition supported by BASC originally against airgun licensing, and through that I got in touch with like the SACS and all the other Scottish Countryside Alliance, and for me and a few other supporters, we thought, well, this is brilliant, we're all kind of working together. And that's how Firearms UK came about. We thought, well, we want to keep this going and keep everyone working together and supporting each other. So target shooters will help clay shooters and game shooters, and we'll all help each other. And it eventually led to us, and it's identified, as mentioned as well, apathy. We've done a 2.2 pistol petition to try and get 2.2 pistols back. And we get amazing, tremendous support from a lot of organs, SACS, BASC, Countryside Alliance, NRA got on board, PSA, everyone, and a few magazines, everyone eventually got on and in some way shared the petition. And while it was an improvement to the last one, we still only got 22,000 signatures. And for us, it's identified that a lot of shooters, maybe they're quite apathetic, think what good's it going to do? And there's also a communication issue, because right up a few months after, people weren't even aware of it. I thought this was everywhere. A lot of organisations published this, and it was in a few magazines. So definitely we need to work on getting shooters involved and building communications with everyone, because there is a lot of shooters that just don't seem to be within reach. So again, all that behind a united front, I think it would stand a better chance and have a better future for shooting, all forms of shooting.
I think, yeah, spot on. It's important that we choose our battles rather than having disparate areas of personal interest and taking forward expanding ammunition, change from Section 5 off ticket again, which we all want to have, and other little quirky little things. We have to work together, choose a handful of objectives, and drive them through to a successful conclusion. And that means that the organisations really have to grip certain elements, certain fights, and these are the ones that we will focus on for 2, 3, 4, 5 years until we have a meaningful, positive conclusion to that. And getting 2.2 pistols back, or that's vital for the future. We fully support that. SACS isn't just about country sports and ferrets and shotgun shooting and rifles and stalking. SACS is about any kind of firearm shooting, archery, catapults, whatever. We support it. We support people's lawful right to enjoy themselves in a sensible way. So fully support Firearms UK. I think the work they're doing is fantastic. It's really engaging. They've got a lot of support in the background. If we can all work better together in terms of choosing our targeted fights, I think we can probably in the next few years achieve an awful lot more than we've ever done before.
Pete, you've maybe got a slightly different view on organisations working together, only in that you stand back from it. You're not involved in the day-to-day running of an organisation, but you are a shooter. You're an editor of a magazine. You speak to a lot of people who are the general public in terms of shooting. I mean, what do you think we need to do to get people more engaged about just about everything? And when we need people to step up and write those letters and actually interact with the organisations that are trying to defend what we all enjoy, we end up with what tends to be a very small number of people that are interacting continually rather than
yes. And I think that interaction is key, and I think everybody that has an interest in shooting sports should, when asked by the representative shooting organisations, engage. I mean, I engage with representatives of all the shooting organisations in this country, and on a positive note, I think everybody does want to work together. It's certainly much more that way than if we went back certainly a decade ago, when everybody worked from themselves. Like now, everybody wants to work together to the common goal. You know, it's united we rule, divided we fall.
It's the only way forward, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Working together.
And I agree with that, Alex. We should be looking at initiatives that are bringing back things such as 2-2 pistol shooting.
Claw some of it back that's been taken away.
Or some of the quarry species that have been taken off the list, and now they should be back on the list.
Ravens?
Absolutely. Ravens are becoming a problem, and even the Brent geese. There's a lot more Brent geese than what there was 50 years ago, and I think that there is certainly evidence there, scientific backed evidence, that we could take a reasonable cull of Brent geese in this country.
No, that's an interesting point.
That's the country as Great Britain, not as the SNP would have it, as Scotland and the rest of it.
Fair enough.
Relatively so.
If we just move on from that just slightly, and I'm just going to go back to Alex, because I want to start there before we sort of fan it out, and that's to talk about Clause 81 of the Policing and Crime Bill. Now, we've seen this across social media in the last month or so, and I think it's fair to say that there's certainly been a lot of confusion as to exactly what the purpose of that is and what it's going to mean for shooters. So Alex, if I can start with you just to explain it, and then we'll go around and just get everybody's take on it.
Okay, I'll keep it as short as I can. The Policing Crime Bill was brought into... The idea behind it is basically to improve the democratic accountability of the fire, rescue and police services. Principally the police services. Some of that has come from Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary reports into various things like firearms licensing. There are a number of elements to the bill itself. It's still going through amendment stages, but there's one there, it's Part 6, which is about firearms. There are a few benefits in terms of definition of a lethal barrel weapon and component parts, etc. There's a definition of antique firearms, which is helpful, but there's a wee bit in there called Clause 81, and it's caused a little bit of confusion amongst the shooting community. Clause 81 is about making Home Office firearms licensing guidance statutory. But the statutory element is simply there will be a statutory requirement for chief officers of police and firearms licensing departments to have regard to Home Office guidance. The requirement is not for shooters to follow guidance. The police will not be able to rewrite firearms law or ban guns or whatever else, or bring in silly new policies. The whole idea behind the Clause 81 is that those police forces that ignore guidance, those police forces that have their own silly wee policies, you can have a 308 but you can't have a 3006, or you can have a treble 2 but not a 223, or those kinds of silly wee things, or we must check your land, or that kind of thing. Those police forces now will be brought into check by a statutory requirement to read, understand and follow, or rather have regard to, Home Office licensing guidance. It will bring in standardisation, it should improve licensing practices, it should improve efficiency in licensing teams, and this will be a good thing for shooters. One of the issues raised by a petition against Clause 81 was the fact that there would be no consultation with shooting interests in terms of the actual wording of guidance. Well, that's not the case. And the actual raison d'etre behind the bill itself was about democratic accountability, and the Home Office made it very clear that there will be full consultation on any material changes to licensing guidance itself. Not only that, the shooting organisations, through British Shooting Sports Council and others, and the Practitioners Working Group, are already consulted widely on changes to licensing guidance. We're very much involved in day-to-day work with the police, but we're hopeful of a eventual move to a new firearms consultative committee at the Home Office level. It may not be called that, but that will be a very good thing for the future.
Fraser, what was the feedback from your members? I imagine that there was some confusion and you had a few phone calls and messages with regard to that.
There was to some degree, yeah. Again, I don't think it was maybe made as clear as what it could have been. Some people were just kind of, really, what is this all about? We're unsure. How do we get this implemented, etc. But I think a lot of it's down to communication and just the ability to be able to get that out there and say, look, this is what it breaks down to. This is what's going to be happening. Obviously, there's going to be a degree of compliance involved there.
I mean, Pete, how important is it, do you think, that this change goes ahead so that you do have this uniformity of policing and firearms licensing across the board, so that somebody in Shetland is being treated to the same as somebody else?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, it's a lot of people in the shooting sports have looked at it as the first of many cuts to ban what we're doing, but I think it's a good thing. As Alex said, standardisation, it's got to be good. Everybody's going to be looking at the same, singing off the same hymn sheet. Transparency, so if one licensing department has stepped out of line, everybody's going to know about it, which has got to be good for everything that we do. And I think really the lastly is common sense. If they implement it with common sense, then it's got to be a good thing.
I'd like to thank a particular individual for the work that he's done in the background on this. And he doesn't get much thanks at all. Many of us here probably don't even know who he is. His name's David Penn from the British Shooting Sports Council. He's a secretary. And he puts so much work into the fight to protect and promote our lawful rights on a very technical level, and it's remarkable the work that he does. He's done an awful lot of work with Basque and others in the background on this, and we're very, very thankful for that. And we're glad to be part of the British Shooting Sports Council. We're privileged to be part of it, and we fully support the work that's happening in the background. It is disappointing that maybe there's been a breakdown in communication, but maybe that's our fault. Maybe the shooting organisations haven't fully communicated that message well to the shooting community. So as we go forward, apart from the fact it'd be good to work better together, it would be good to also communicate better together. So we're hopeful that will change.
Dave, I don't know if you have anything to add on beyond what Fraser said?
No, just if one of the big complaints we've had of people is, as you say, police forces have been implementing or interpreting things in different ways. And if that's a standardisation and they'd have to follow the rules, it can only be a good thing, definitely.
One thing that is discussed, I know Pete and I have discussed it before, and if I come to you first, Pete, is the restrictions of calibers that we have in this country, where it is maybe seen as, that is, to quote quite often what you hear, that caliber is too big, you can't have it. And in terms of public safety, what that really means. I know you've got a particular opinion on that, Pete.
Well, I think a 243 or a 300 Win Mag is going to kill somebody, whichever one it is. It's the guy behind the rifle, so I really can't see where caliber restrictions come into it. It's actually the guy who's using that rifle. If he's fit to use a rifle, and it's the caliber that should be fit for purpose of what he's actually stalking or whatever application that rifle's being engaged for.
Mm-hmm. Fraser?
Certainly in the respect of the larger calibers, for example, obviously we've seen quite a lot of the show today rather, and the exhibitors showing things like, for example, the Barrett 50 cal, etc.
It's not really a stalking caliber.
Well, not really, no. But as I say, again, obviously,
well, not for hoof game anyway.
No. But again, as I say, there is purpose for these guns, and I think ultimately, shooters should have the rights to be able to purchase them if they have a justifiable reason for possession and ownership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do the HFT with air guns and what have you, but I also have firearms, rimfires and centrefires. Okay. And I was talking to my FEO a little while ago, and I've got up to 308 at the moment, and I asked a question. I said, well, what's the chance of me getting something bigger? And he said, well, how much land have you got? And I said, I don't know, 3 to 5,500 acres. And he went, not a chance, just categorically, straight away. And
on any basis?
I just said no.
You don't have enough land.
I was like, how much land do I actually need to buy? And it's ridiculous because the constraints they put on you sometimes is just ridiculous. And they're a mercurial bunch because one minute they're going, oh, that's a lovely, yeah, you can have that caliber, fine, and the next one, well, no. And it's very depending on their mood. And then, I mean, rightly or wrongly, I've got a clean bill of health. I've got 10 years with firearms, and if you get them on a good day, you can have pretty much what you want, and the next day, absolutely not. And I don't think there's any uniformity to that, and that really does annoy me because let's say about the 50 cal, I shot that in America while I was in America, and I loved it. A wonderful gun, brilliant, absolutely amazing. And I thought I'd like to join the 50 cal club, and I phoned them out and they went, "You haven't got a chance. That's it." So again, you walk away from it. It's just a shame,
Alex, I assume that Clause 81 will rectify some of that, or would I be incorrect in saying that?
It will help. It's a step along the road of better policing in terms of licensing and standardisation of practices, and actually more proportionate response from the police, and better service as well. But our view at SACS is that it's the Section 1 tests in terms of each calibre authorisation, your ammunition limits, etc., are ridiculous. Our view is that Section 1 firearms should go back to its Section 2 position. If you are the right person, if you are checked to be medically fit, both with body and mind, if you don't have a criminal background, if you're judged to be of good character, it's about you as an individual. You should be able to buy a 12-bore shotgun, a 410 shotgun, a 2.2 rimfire, a 303 rifle, a 45-70, whatever you want to buy. So there shouldn't be restrictions in calibers, that's our view. There shouldn't be restrictions in the amount of ammunition you can buy, that's our view. We need to focus on the licensing of the individual and less about the licensing of bits and bobs of technicality, ammunition, expanding ammunition. Does it expand? Does it not expand? Is 2.2 Magnums, semi-automatics, EU firearms directives? It's about people. Licensing is about people. And we need to go back to that principle.
In fact, we totally agree with what Alex saying, and in fact I think it's interesting to know, I believe in New Zealand they operate a system where it's basically the person that's licensed, and I've spoken to a few New Zealand shooters. I mean, I believe they've still got SLRs, they've got pistols, I think you can get full auto, and they've got a very low gun crime rate, very low violent crime. I don't think the police routinely carry firearms over there, despite what civilians can own. So again, if you've got the right system, I mean, you could reduce costs dramatically by putting a lot of things onto Section 2. You're still, as long as you're vetting the person properly, it would improve licensing and efficiency. It wouldn't be detrimental to public safety, and it'd be a great way to go forward for everyone, I think. And it's been shown, there's a working example that shows it's not a bad thing.
This wasn't on my list, but it's just sort of sprung to mind, and maybe I can start with you, Pete. We have seen a slight shift, and I think some of it's somewhat come over from America with the militarization of how guns look. So you might have something, it's still a 2.2 rifle, it's still a 2.2 rimfire that you go shoot rabbits with, but it now doesn't look like a CZ Bruno. It looks more tactical. Yeah, it maybe looks like an AK-47, but essentially what it does is exactly the same. What's your view on just that aspect of it?
Well, to be careful what I say here, but I think really this to make a sporting weapon look, a sporting firearm look like a military weapon, I think that's got to ask its own questions. I mean, there's a lot of weekend wannabe warriors out there, I guess, that it's fine if you want to go and do the S-off thing, which is brilliant, but to use that kind of firearm, which looks like a military weapon for sporting shooting, and I'm a traditionalist too, so it looks a little bit crass to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What about CSR, that sort of thing? Because they use the AR style M16.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you agree with that, or?
Yeah, but I don't disagree with it. This is a personal view. I'm a traditionalist, and I don't even like composite stocks. I like a wooden rifle stock.
He's old-fashioned as Pete.
Not always, Byron.
I think it's worth bearing in mind that a lot of this comes down to just furniture on the gun itself. It's all simply accessories that can be added on.
Yeah.
If you strip down the rifle to its basic component parts, you're essentially looking at it being the same rifle. For example, a Remington 1022 has many variations on obviously how it can look and be sold. Again, right up to the standard classic design to, as you say, the more military style ones. I think a lot of it comes down to personal taste at the end of the day. I don't think shooters should be ridiculed because they come up with a particular style of rifle. And I don't think this whole black guns scenario is, it's not quite fair. I mean, Yeah,
but the point I'd like to make on it, I think, and I absolutely agree, it's everybody's choice. But the thing is, the public perception.
Yes.
That's what we shouldn't underestimate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we talk about public perception. I mean, a lot of people don't perceive game shooting and deer stalking to be good. The public perception of that could be terrible. A lot of people think, oh, you're shooting animals. They don't understand why you need to do it. It's all about conservation and land management. They just see it, oh, you're killing helpless animals. So, I mean, you could be perfect deer stalker using a traditional rifle, the public perception could still be terrible. So this is where unity comes in. You should support black gun owners if that's what they're into, and in turn they should support deer stalkers, because as long as we're obeying the law and we're following best practice, it really shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I wrote a blog post on our website a few years ago. It's, you don't need your gun, you want it. It basically comes down to how many people actually need their guns in this country. I mean, we do target shooting, we do clay shooting. You don't need your gun unless you carry out pest control or deer stalking. So very few people need to own guns in this country, but we do it because it's fun and we want to own them. And this is where we need to just support each other. If you're a law-abiding citizen, if it's not your cup of tea, fine. But we should support each other.
No, I absolutely agree on supporting each other. But it's that particular firearm in the environment it's to be used in. So if you've got something that looks like an AK-47 and you're going out there rabbit shooting with it, and it just doesn't fit well for me. It's the uneducated that's looking outside looking in. That's where I have the issue with. I haven't got an issue with guys who, whatever their hobby is, and they're enjoying what they're doing. I'll support them 110%. But it's the public perception we shouldn't overlook.
You think there should be more? We should be careful about how we portray it.
Yes.
Alex, you want to come in here?
Yeah, we fully support people's right to have any kind of furniture and firearms that you want. Whatever you want your firearm to look like is entirely up to you. We need to move away from things like how a firearm looks to the licensing of the individual behind it. However, there is that balance here. People's perception of those with firearms isn't always the best informed ever. And it's our duty to educate them, to create awareness of the good things. My view is that more people should get firearms certificates or apply for them, because we are one of the most law-abiding sectors in the community, firearms and shotguns. More people should apply for certificates, and they'll be, we are a good thing. If more people had certificates, maybe there'd be less crime in the UK. So that's another way of looking at it. So perception is important. So if you're standing in the Tesco's queue to buy your Sunday newspaper, you just come in stalking, you're wearing your Realtree camouflage suit, you've got blood on your hands and on your trousers, maybe that's not the wisest thing to do that day. You know what you're doing, you understand that you're doing a very good job in terms of deer control, but you might be upsetting somebody that doesn't fully understand what you do. On the positive side, things like the Into the Wilderness films are a great way, this is not a plug, it's genuine, are a great way of engaging with an audience that may not be against what we do, but they just don't understand it. So if we can provide them with a bit of interesting information, with a film that is captivating and
or like this podcast, for example.
Well, like this podcast. Then they'll hopefully listen, they can watch, they can start to, even if they never want to pull a trigger in their lives, at least they can understand what we do and not criticise us unfairly.
Roger, what do you think we need to do to change public perception about hunting and firearms and gun use in general?
I think, to be honest, talk about it. I mean, just talk about it, get the word out there, show people that, and the amount of people that say to me, oh, you shoot these bunnies and this and that and the other. So yeah, but I'm doing a job for my father-in-law, for instance. Yeah, he's like a farmer and what have you, and so I have to sort of bunnies control and all that. You have to do that. It's just a fact of life. We have too many deer, so we have to cull a few deer. And obviously that's what you have to do. And if you the way it's perceived by a lot of people is it's barbaric, it's this, it's that, it's the other. Well, as we all know, it's not. And it's a fact of country life. But I think the way to publicise it is talk about it. I mean, just and get people and engage with people that don't like it and say, okay, tell me why, and just thrash your ideas around. And if you don't talk to, if you keep it to yourself and say I'm going to do it regardless, it's going to get people's back up.
We actually, if you go to the Scott Country stand here, you can actually speak to a 12-year-long vegetarian who was a complete against anti-hunting. And the only reason why she came round is because her current partner now took the time to explain to her why. And when we asked her, why didn't you like it in the first place? Why didn't you eat meat? She said, because I was under the impression that hunting was cruel. And then when he actually took me out shooting and explained, we do actually eat most of the stuff that we shoot. And now she's on board with it, goes shooting with them, and she only eats meat that they have actually shot themselves.
She won't eat any farm meat.
She won't eat any farm meat, but she'll now eat meat that they've shot themselves.
But Daryl, you've made an interesting point there, because this chap's taken the time. Okay, it's his partner, but he's taken the time.
It wasn't at the time, though.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
no.
Well done, good old boy.
Maybe there was incentive.
Maybe there was a little bit of incentive.
But if everybody took the time, if each and every one of us took the time to try and educate somebody who was prepared to listen, then it would make a massive difference.
The other thing is, public perception is important. We need to think about not so much how we look at ourselves, but we need to think about how other people perceive us. It's very important. But never apologise for shooting and never apologise for hunting. What we do is vital for conservation. We are a safe community in the UK, we're responsible people. And actually, in terms of conservation, the shooting community in the UK does more conservation than all the UK's conservation charities joined together. That is a fact. We need to sell this. Don't apologise for what you do, but we have to think about people's perception. And like Pete said, get out there, grab somebody that you think might not understand what we do, feed them rabbit, feed them venison, feed them trout, get them involved.
Just talking about public perception, I was just thinking in my mind on social media. Do you think that people need to be a bit more careful about what they're putting on, as in regards to what they've done is perfectly legal, 100% fine, they've shot something, a fox for example, but it might not be tasteful to everyone?
I totally agree. You look. I mean, I've got lots of friends, luckily, on Facebook, or lots of people on Facebook. Let's say friends, but you see these graphic images of these foxes, and they're obviously a very good shot placement, and it's done the job. If they showed the entry, it would be lovely. Unfortunately, they don't know the exit, and people to go, oh, what's going on there? It looks like a car crash. It looks absolutely horrendous.
They've not had the full story, though.
No, absolutely right. But an anti will see that and go, look at that, that's disgusting. That poor thing suffered. You're like, actually, it didn't at all. I mean, it didn't. It was banged out. But that's not the way people see it. They see blood and guts. Oh, that must be bad. Simple as that. And it is awful. And I think there's too much of that. I'm very mindful of what I put on Facebook.
Fraser, what's your take on the importance of perception on social media?
Social media, as well as media as a whole, I think is an interesting point, because we've found that certainly as Firearms UK, media perception out there, for example, the way organisations like the BBC, for example, perceive shooting, they seem to perceive it in a very, very negative light. Which is obviously not what we're looking for. Our page exists on, for example, on Facebook, Twitter and the other social media platforms to take away that perception that's been put out that it's a very negative thing. We're putting forward a positive spin on it and saying, this is a good thing, it's a sport, it's something we enjoy, it's something people do, it's something we want to continue to do.
Dave, what do you say to those shooters and hunters who continually do this on social media? I mean, we see it on a fairly...
Byron sometimes brought it up,
I actually got kicked out of a couple of the groups because they weren't very happy that I brought up the fact that, you know what, guys, you should not be showing this stuff. Not because what you're doing is wrong, but because from a public point of view and how the public view it, it doesn't do us any favours. And it would be far better to put up pictures with an explanation as to why you've done it, and something that I don't like... It's very. I'm not explaining it very well when I say something that looks nicer, but that's kind of what I mean. Blood and guts not hanging out, a picture of a beautiful fox, and actually show some respect for it. And the response that we often get, and I got in return to that, was quite disgusting, to be honest. And I wouldn't associate myself with those people who call themselves hunters like that. And I think we do, as hunters and shooters, need to take a stance against people and actually pull them up. I mean, I don't know what you think.
I agree. I mean, definitely the respect thing is the main thing. I mean, you should respect your quarry, and by all means, if you want a picture or whatever, try and show it in a respectful light. Don't show it. You wouldn't treat that a dead human like that. Try a bit of respect. But there's also part of saying if you're in a private group and you want to maybe say, I don't see why there should be a problem maybe showing your quarry. But again, if you put an explanation in and a respectful picture, I don't think that's as bad. But we definitely need to be mindful of perception. And as you say, sometimes you don't know who's in groups. There could be antis lurking in there. They get these pictures, and it's everywhere.
At the end of the day, most of these groups are public groups that most people can just access at
if it's a very small private group of friends, you're fair enough. But
that's different though. If you've got 6 friends on a group, you're all best mates with them.
Exactly.
It's a different situation, isn't it?
It's unfortunate. It's a situation we're in. We're always kind of we're not always on the defence, because we're all people are always out to say, look at these people. So definitely need to watch what we do.
Pete, you do a lot of filming on the shooting show, and that is something that you must have been, I know, because obviously when we did some of the early filming of it, it was something that we were definitely conscious of, and I know you've carried that forward into the work that you've done recently, including the magazine. Do you want to just elaborate on that a bit?
No, I think the key word there is respect, and everybody here agrees on it. It's respect for the animal, and I think don't show the car wreck. The exit side of the animal isn't going to be pretty. There's no need to put it out there. If I shoot a deer, nearly every deer that I shoot, buck or doe, goes on my Facebook page. But I show it respect. It's cleaned up nicely. It's a nice photograph. I'm against a lot of people who say you shouldn't smile. I think it's the result. It's the end result.
We've talked about this before on the show. Smiling.
I haven't got a problem with the smiling side of it, but I have got a problem with showing carnage on there. That's unnecessary. And I've got a problem with the people who think it is.
Well, often when you go on the anti pages, the first thing they say is, look at this gleeful hunter standing over what he's just shot because he's smiling. What we've said thousands and thousands of times, they're not smiling because they're happy
about the death.
About the death. It's the whole experience that they've just gone through.
It's a successful conclusion in the whole experience. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, an interesting. Sorry, something. I mean, I've encountered some gentlemen in my work, and we had a wee debates, and they were going about shooting, and I showed them the picture of my first stag, and like, oh, that's blood flash. You don't need to do that, and all that, And they said, no, you don't need to go out to kill animals. You can buy it in a supermarket.
Of course you can buy it in a supermarket.
But the point I said, well, but they said you're just got a bloodlust. I said, well, have you ever been fishing? And it's interesting that they'll say yeah, and then they suddenly realise I've been fishing. They've got a picture of the great fish they've caught, and that's totally fine. But I said, if you've shot something, there is again. It's about shooting. There seems to be the bias against.
We've said this before.
We talked about this on a podcast just
last week, and how strange people distinguish between a fish and an animal on land, but at the end of the day, it's exactly the same.
Exactly.
And you should have just as much respect for that fish than you do for an animal on land.
And you're smiling
because it's not fluffy and cute. I find fish quite. I don't want to.
You're going to say
attractive,
right?
But I think they're beautiful animals. They are amazing creatures, and you think the hardship that fish go through in their lives. Yeah, it's incredible.
Exactly. And you're smiling at the end result of a good day, and you're respectful. That's why you're smiling. It's not about killing at all.
Alex?
Yeah, fully support Pete and Dave's comments about respect for quarry. It makes sense. The other side is we must respect each other. Some of the comments said on social media, you wouldn't say them to somebody's face, and it's not right. So we have to think about perception again. Is what you're putting down on social media is equivalent to writing a letter to somebody. That could be construed in the wrong way. So be very, very careful with the words you choose. If you're going to criticise people for trying to do the right thing, trying to raise awareness of good practice, look at yourself. Think about why are you trying to justify bad practice in yourself? Is it correct to put up photographs of a fox with his brains blown apart? We all know what a 223 40 grain VMAX does. Do we have to advertise that on Facebook? No. So what you can do and what you should do are two very different things.
As I said before, we've brought this up a couple of times, and it has been the result of me being kicked out of one or two groups because they didn't like the fact, in fact one of them was the fact that I said you need to show some respect to your quarry in reference to foxes. They didn't seem to understand that concept. But one thing I did see recently which really pleased me was I saw somebody, they put up a picture of a carcass. They put up a picture of the carcass, and they had a picture of the lungs and heart actually taken out of it. And they took the time to explain the range that they had shot it at and a particular bullet which they had never used before. Now, you could, if you were just glancing at the picture, think, there's blood and mess and lungs and a heart, and that might, for some people, seem disgusting. But the fact that they had taken the time to put that beside the carcass, show the damage and meat wastage, because they explained this say this is the range I shot at, I've never used these bullets before, and for anybody's interest, this is what they did and this is how they performed. I think that is how we should be behaving. And there is a place for those kind of pictures because it's education, and education is always the key.
Absolutely.
Everyone was nodding their head at what I just said there. Just to kind of finish up, and I'm going to come to Pete with this, trophy hunting. Trophy hunting is something which we talk about a lot on the podcast because
every few weeks it comes up.
And the main reason for that is that in terms of the phrase trophy hunting, it has massively negative connotations in terms of the way it's perceived in the media and also the beliefs held by the public. Pete, you are also involved in an anti-poaching organisation. You can maybe tell us a little bit about that and then go on to explain why trophy hunting is important for the long-term survival of species, especially in Africa.
Yeah, I'm a hunter conservationist, and so I have a foot in both camps. And hunting is a valuable tool in conservation. Unfortunately, in the modern world, everything is a commodity. The minute it ceases to be a commodity, it's valueless. Nobody's going to care about it, and that includes wildlife. So whether we monetize wildlife through photography, tourism, or hunting, as long as the money that is generated from whichever activity is generating that money goes back into conservation, I do not have an issue with it. And ethical conservation, ethical hunting, as long as it's ethically justified, and I can't say that word too much, it must be ethical, whether that's big game hunting, right down to rabbit shooting or squirrel shooting, there's got to be an ethical justification for what you're doing. And I don't have any issue with that whatsoever. I think it's black and white. But what I do have an issue with is people who are not prepared to listen to rational argument, listen to scientific-based facts, and then make a considered decision. And the word trophy, the word hunting, the word poaching, when it all gets rolled together, it makes my blood boil.
Just to for those people, when we do have people who listen to this podcast who are not hunting, who don't hunt, who don't fish, who are not really involved in the countryside, but they're intrigued by what's going on. You as a hunter, and you've been a big game hunter, you've done a lot of hunting in Africa and around the world. Just elaborate on your role within this, the anti-hunting and anti-poaching organisation, which you helped set up.
Yeah,
because I think that's really important for people to see. Here's a guy, Peter Carr. You can go and Google him. I'm sure you'll find pictures of all manner of game he's shot around the world. But you set this up off your own back.
Yeah, I was one of the founders of the Endangered Species Protection Agency, which is specifically formed to protect endangered species. It's all in the name. And there's the problem that everybody's heard about at the moment is the rhino poaching. And within the next 10 years, never mind 20 years, if we don't stop what's happening now to the rhino, they will go extinct. We mulled this initiative over and we launched it, and it's gone very, very, very well. We're involved in a project in Swaziland, and thankfully, since we've been training the rangers out there, there's been no poaching. Swaziland hasn't lost a rhino, and they've got a very, very good track record in Swaziland for anti-poaching. The ranger service there at big game parks, it's the King's mandate to look after the game of Swaziland. North of Swaziland, you've got the Kruger National Park, which more than half the rhinos that are killed on an annual basis come out of the Kruger Park. But the Kruger Park's a big place. It's kind of the size of Wales, And south of there, you've got KZN, another heavily poached area, and then of course on the eastern boundary you've got Mozambique, which where all the majority of the poachers are coming from. Seasoned bushfighters are going in there for nothing else but money. Ruthless murderers of both people and rhinos, just doing it solely for financial gain.
But where does hunting itself fit into the protection of such species?
Well, it's the money generated from that, and it's if we use Kenya and what's happening in Botswana just recently. Kenya stopped hunting in the 70s, and then all the professional hunters, which policed the area, the animals actually had monetary value, and a lot of money went back into conservation. Hunting was banned. The PHs moved out. They actually, a lot of them set up in Botswana, but elephant poaching rocketed. Once the hunting was taken out of the equation, poaching rocketed. They've just recently stopped big game hunting in Botswana, and I can see exactly the same thing happening there.
It's already happened. Yeah. I mean, Fraser, what's your take on the public perception and what we see with regard to the phrase trophy hunting? I mean, there's actually been quite a lot in the media in the last couple of weeks. I mean, Diggory was on, Piers Morgan. I don't know if you saw that interview.
Absolutely. Again, public perception, and again, the media, the way it's perceived, it is generally perceived to be very negative. I mean, obviously we saw the situation whereby the dentist shot the lion, and that was obviously...
Don't mention Cecil.
Absolutely. No. This is it. And I mean, that was huge. I mean, ultimately, he was just a hunter that was going out. He went into it in good faith, and ultimately then had this huge ridicule associated with it.
And everything he did was legal.
Exactly.
From my understanding of looking into it, I think the only thing that he really did, which was stupid and wrong, was try and hide the fact he had shot a collared lion. But there was actually nothing wrong with shooting the collared lion in the first place, because that happens, and that's how they get their information.
Exactly.
Actually, I've got something I'd like to add to that. I looked into this in some depth. I spent 3 days on regional and national radio trying to actually win some ground back for professional ethical hunting. And I do believe there was no lion quota left in this concession. So everything was down to the PH. This Walter Palmer, I believe the chap's name was, he booked the hunt on good faith. But there's a lot come out since He'd also a similar situation with a bear without a tag in the States, so he's kind of not as white as perhaps he'd like to the world to believe. But we get back to this canned lion hunting, which this was a semi-tame lion, baited out of a national park area with a collar on. Now, he was quite close to, I think it was 15 yards away from this animal. And okay, it's a maned lion, but you're going to see one of these big collars, surely. There's a lot of things that really don't stack up there. But canned lion hunting is the worst thing that's ever happened to big game hunting. And even FASA, the South African Professional Hunters Association, have stepped away from captive breeding of big cats for the hunting industry. Shooting a semi-tame cat.
Quotation marks there for people listening. Yeah.
Shooting a semi-tame cat that's been released 4 days into an enclosed area, and then
it's just wrong.
It's just absolutely wrong.
It's not really hunting,
is
it?
It's not hunting.
And I think any true hunter would absolutely agree by that and stand by it. And I know that certainly the professional hunters that I associate with and who are friends of mine across Africa, and I'm sure the same is true of you, Pete. Even when maybe a blind eye was turned to canned hunting, they would have nothing to do with it.
Yeah. But it sticks. The problem is this terminology sticks to ethical hunting.
Yeah.
Alex, do you have just anything to add to the trophy hunting perception and what we can maybe do to try and fix that?
I think the important thing for us to do is for those celebrities that support the anti-hunting, the anti-trophy hunting stance, often for selfish, self-publicising reasons, we should call them out. We should call them out in facts, evidence. We should call them out on African governments themselves who support hunting for various economic reasons. We should make sure that the communities in these African areas where hunting is taking place speak for themselves. Is hunting good for them in the local communities? So the Angus Glens Moorland Group type setup, where local communities talk about the good work happening in their area in terms of hunting, shooting, fishing, other rural interests. Perhaps that's something for the future in Africa.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't actually thought of that.
Yeah. Good model to follow, absolutely.
Agreed, yeah.
Just touching on that, has everyone around the table seen some of the Moorland Group associations up in Scotland and what they've been set up with? Fraser, have you caught that on social media at all?
Not as yet, no. As I say,
it's something to check out. Pete, we've
covered it in the magazine.
Yeah, you have, haven't you?
Yeah.
A good initiative. Do you think it's working?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about education. It is education because I'm to use the term ignorant, and it's not ignorance by choice, but people that are prepared to listen, let's educate them. And the only way by doing that is getting media time and putting a credible argument across. Let people make their own considered decision based on factual evidence.
Roger, do you have anything to add on this discussion? No.
I don't like the idea of shooting tame lions. I've got to be honest.
No, I think that's
I'm not big on that.
Consensus agreement around the table. I think.
Yeah, calling it in, go, and then shooting it. No, not a bit of me. I'm afraid. No.
Just to finish up on a much lighter note, we're at the Northern Shooting Show. It's the first time this has been held. If I just go around the table, what's the feeling being here? Has it been a success? Are you going to be coming next year? If I start with you, Dave.
Oh yeah, well it's been absolutely fantastic experience. And as you can probably tell, the weather's been great. I'm a wee bit burnt, so
I did notice.
Not used to that, but no, it's been great. I've got to try a few different firearms, seen a few different stalls, and I speak very highly of it. I'd come back next year in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's been great. Really has. I'm looking forward to the next big event, which is the UK Game Fair, 22nd, 24th July at Stoneleigh.
And you'll be back here again next year?
Yeah, definitely back here again next year.
This is almost home territory for you, Pete.
Yeah, it is. Hey, listen, I'm from Yorkshire and the people around here can't understand me.
Fraser?
Absolutely.
You're very burnt.
The show, I got fried well. Yeah, obviously from our perspective, we've been doing a lot of sort of flyering, making sure people are aware of us. The general response has been really, really positive. The show itself has been great. This is my first opportunity to come down here, and it's been excellent. Certainly, we'll hopefully maybe try and get on the next one up in Scone in Scotland.
It's been fantastic. We've seen so many smiley faces, people queuing up for burgers and hog roast baps and chatting about the event itself and the venue. The venue's great, the crowds are fantastic, the traders are great, the second-hand guns, new guns, archery, air gunning. The best thing for me were two good things for me. One was seeing a young lady and her boy walking down the steps towards Hall 2, and in the lady's rucksack was a bow and arrow, and the young
I
boy...
saw that. I saw that. Yes.
Yeah, you were there with me, and he was just looking up towards a bow and arrow in his mother's rucksack, and that was me as a kid, looking up there, can't wait to go home and use it. But the other thing was heading down to pick up Roger from the air gunning
So
ranges.
busy down
It's
there.
so busy.
Very much so.
Yeah.
People smiling. You walk down the raceway to get to it, and you hear the laughter in the distance. And it's great fun. It's really safe. The sun's shining. Next year's going to be even better.
Roger, just finishing up with you. You've got the final word.
Oh, well, makes a change. As he looks at his wedding ring. The situation for us, we turned up and we wanted a few people, obviously. We wanted to sort of show people what air gunning's about. It's just a basic introduction, and I'm overwhelmed, absolutely overwhelmed.
At the end of the day, that's where most people start.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where we started.
Yeah, and then people have come along and they've said, I've never shot an air gun before, right? Can we shoot one? Of course you can. So we took them on the course, they shot a few targets. And I think it was 4 people yesterday went straight from us, straight to a manufacturer, and then bought a gun straight away.
That's
and then came back and said, there you go, right? Can I shoot
That's what
tomorrow?
it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were absolutely loving it. They're now, the second round of the competition is going on as we speak. And the 4 people that bought them yesterday are now shooting the competition.
Really?
Fantastic.
Now, I
Yes.
mean, there you go. For me, I mean, tick the box, doesn't it? So I'm very, very happy with that. And so I say, Simon Moore from BSA, I've obviously been sending them his way, and he officially loves me. He officially loves me.
When you walk around the show, the air gun is, you would say, the busiest. Yeah, the
I
air
think
gun,
so.
The hall and the stands where everyone's shooting
I
is
think so.
the busiest in the place.
It's nice that the people they go and look at an air gun, and then they come down to like the competition that's going on at the moment. They'll look at an air gun. I think, well, I've just seen that. Actually, that guy looks like he's, he might be all right. Then he gets the target down, the chap, and they go, right, I want that gun. I definitely want to go out and buy that gun straight away. And then flies up, buys it, and then so hopefully we'll see them at the next round.
How do people get involved in the competition?
Register online. The Shooting the Breeze. We go. It's like an HFT forum, and you go on there, put your name down, and then come along. It's brilliant.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time out today to speak to us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Lose the beard.
Is that a beard that you have?
It's well manicured.
Well, thank you very much for tuning into the show, and a massive thank you to the literally thousands of people that downloaded our show in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been quite incredible, and we can only keep on doing what we're doing by the support of the people who listen to it, and of course the support of our supporter, which is SACS.
Yeah, no, I mean, we do this show for you guys to listen to, and yeah, you listen and you engage with us, and that's the way it works. So if anything whatsoever, just contact us.
Yeah, we really do enjoy hearing from everybody who's listening.
And I'm going to ask guys, because they've slowed down a little bit. Reviews.
Oh yeah.
Can you keep leaving reviews on iTunes, please? It really does help us, and we're now ranked 16th in the outdoor section for podcast for new and noteworthy globally. So our aim is to get to number 1. We've now destroyed the Orvis podcast. We're ahead of that now. It's only taken us a wee while, and yeah, so we are in fact the top countryside hunting one
In the UK.
Well, no, in the world.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Hey, that's news to me. That's good news.
Yeah.
Good stuff. We promised that we would give you the details of how to enter the competition to win the Caldwell EMAX low-profile ear defenders. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm holding them up to the screen right now. If you want to see what they look like, check out our Facebook page.
We'll have better pictures up.
Yeah. In fact, we're going to do a video on it like we've done with everything, so you'll be able to see. Now you would like to know how to enter. Daryl?
Okay, guys, we like to make you work a little bit for it because, you have to. This week, for the next 2 weeks, we're going to ask for a video. So all you need to do is get your selfie stick out or whatever you...
We'll get someone to hold
the camera or hold it yourself or do whatever you need to do. Send us a video of whatever you are doing outside. I don't want it inside the house.
Yeah, it has to be outside.
It has to be outside. Whatever you are doing, if you're walking the dogs, shooting or fishing, anything.
On a mountaintop.
On a mountain, it doesn't matter. In fact, the cooler the location, the better.
Yeah.
But we like dogs as well, guys. But we don't, we like dogs. But, so all you need to do, make it as short as you want, 10 seconds. So no shorter than 10, actually, at least 10. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and yeah, tell us what show you've liked the most so far.
Yeah, tell us where you are as well.
Tell us where you are, what show you've liked the most so far, and then all you need to do is fire that onto our Facebook page, and we will see that. And for the non-Facebook users, you can email it to us at podcast@paceproductionsuk.com. It will be in the description, the email address. You can email it to us, or if you don't want to do any of those, you can actually upload it to YouTube and just send us the link if you want.
Or Instagram, actually.
Or in fact, guys, you can make a 10, 15-second video and put it on Instagram, and then just tag us in it, and we will see it.
Yeah, so there is lots of ways to do it.
And it will be the pinned post at the top of our Facebook page for the next 2 weeks. So you can get all the details there, or you can just re-listen to the podcast, and all the details will be in the description as well.
And that's it, I think.
I believe that is
For
it.
2 weeks.
For 2 weeks. So leave us a review, and remember, for the people that are watching all over the different platforms, there might be a better platform for you to listen on. So you can get it on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and TuneIn Radio.
Mm-hmm. This podcast is supported by the Scottish Association for Country Sports. You heard from the director, Alex, at the very start of the show. If you want to know any more about air guns, then have a look at the PDFs that we're going to provide on the website, thepacebrothers.com. You can also check out all of that content on the SACS Facebook page. And if you really have a burning question that you don't know the answer to, give them a call. Just Google SACS, get their number, and someone in the office will pick up the phone, and they will, I am sure, be able to answer whatever question you have.
Yep. Thank you very much for listening, and see you in 2 weeks' time.